awesome year working. It's honestly been one of the best things that's happened to our practice in the last year. And I'm excited to share with you the different ways that we've integrated Grin and how it's evolved with our practice and how our practice has changed because of Grin. And I also want, each of you that are here listening, I don't think it's, it wouldn't be correct for me to say, do everything that I'm doing, but think about how some of these tools can help some of the points in your practice and how some of your patients might benefit from this. So yeah, just as Jillian mentioned, I was one of the KOLs. So I would call it Scanvacit, maybe Grinfluencer, maybe as a funnier title. I love dad jokes and just having a really good time in the office. So I like Scanvacit. I'm going to go with that for today. So I am compensated for this lecture, but I buy the scopes and pay the the usage fees just like everyone else. And all the clinical pictures and all the other things that I'm highlighting are my own and not necessarily the opinions of Grin. Okay. Just a little bit of housekeeping. So we'd love to have your video camera on, and at the end we are going to have a Q&A. So if you can keep yourself on mute for the whole webinar, and then at the end we'll have plenty of time. Also, if you have any questions as things are coming up and you don't want to forget it, just put it into the chat, and we have some support staff that will kind of organize those, and we'll answer those at the end of the webinar. And we have, a great pricing offer for you as well at the very end. So they've put together a great deal if you're interested in signing up. Okay. So a little bit about me. I did my dental school training at Western University in California, where I teach currently. I did my orthodontic certificate with J Park at AT Still. I'm board certified in Canada and in the US, and did a small stint up in Calgary, Alberta, before coming back down to Colorado to do a startup practice. So had some great mentors over the years, and have really enjoyed just the educational path that I've been on. I'm the owner at Level Up Orthodontics, and I'm also a partner at Reese's Dental and Braces, where I use Grin in both practices. So I have about 3,500 active patients at Reese's, and many of them are on Grin, and then also quite a few at Level Up Orthodontics, where we really rolled that out as part of our startup. So it's really exciting to see the two. Want to give you an overview of Grin, what it is. I think at its heart of hearts, Grin is a software company, and it's using that software to bring better access to patient communication and giving doctors the tools to be able to interact with them and increase, all the types of measures of productivity that we have in an orthodontic practice, along with the scope, which is very easy to use, and I'll show you some demos of that. The patient-facing app gives them a continuous HIPAA-compliant chat function, as well as the ability to see their own scans and interact with the doctor's office. And then on our end, on the doctor's end, we have kind of a very simple and easy to use platform to view the scans, to manage the patients as they're signing up, as well as that durable chat history, which is a huge part of how we train and use Grin staff. So there's lots of different things that Grin does, and I'm going to talk about what are the main things in our office, but I want you to think about what an increase in communication, in telehealth, and in these high quality video images that you're getting, what that can do for convenience, right? It can reduce visits. It certainly opens up a really, really great communication platform with your patients in the office, and just gives you more flexibility and how you're going to interact with patients and what the visits are going to look like and when they can come in and all those. It can be used across all different modalities. This isn't just an aligner product or a consultation tool, which it does all of that, but it's also used for observation and retention, which is great. Some of the things that I'll show you and I want you to think about is how this tool could help you reduce chair time. A big one is emergency situations and just increased communication regarding an emergency. The rescheduling headaches that come from playing phone tag with parents is pretty much completely eliminated in our practice now because of this. And it really helps just make our appointments really valuable. And I think that's a conversation that in our office and within Grin, I think has really even changed and evolved over the last year as we've started to use it. Because I think at the beginning, we're like, let's try to save visits. But now we're like, well, we really want to make these visits really valuable. And in turn, that's what's going to save us the visits. So we've had a kind of a different approach, and I want to share that with you tonight. And I think the other, going into oversight, which is the next one, you have a much better handle on what's going on outside of the practice, from hygiene to problems with tracking aligners, and even just checking in, care calls, all of that we do on Grin. So again, as you're thinking about how you can use this in your office, these are some of the ways that I found that it really works for us. We've gone all in with Grin. It's part of our marketing. So that was a really fun video that we put together in our office, because we mentioned this in every single consult. And a year later, now that we've implemented Grin fully in our practice, these are some of the ways that I wanted to highlight tonight of how it's really changed our practice. It's really helped us with patient care, but having a really united front and back office. It's part of our office culture in terms of how we get excited with patients to see the changes and share that with them. It's been a huge help for us in team training as our team has grown from 2 people to 5 people now over the last year at a startup. It's been really great to be able to go back and look at these patients and look at their scans and what we said and what's happened. That's been a huge thing. And like I talked about earlier, we're looking at increasing the value during appointments, what we can actually do, what we can accomplish, and how quickly we can make those decisions based on the scan has changed what we decide. And also some of the new features that I was able to pilot that I want to share with you that are now available really have helped us with hygiene compliance as well as inventory control. So this is some of the things that our patients have been saying. I'm going to share with you the results of a patient survey that we did in our office specifically related to Grin. But one of the parents, right after doing a consultation and telling her about Grin, which is usually, again, my last thing that I talk about so that it kind of covers whatever concerns I think they might have. That one of the things right away that I've heard parents say is, man, oh great, now I don't have to worry so much about the hygiene, because with braces, that is something that we talk about, and they get pretty scared because they're like, oh, I haven't been in my kid's bathroom in a while, or I don't want to take responsibility for that. And I just tell the parents, well, wait, we can help you with that now. This is something that we're in together. So that's one parent said, it was a huge relief for them. The other patient, and you'll see one of his scans later, he said, it takes 30 seconds, and it's so cool to see the progress in his teeth. So it's super encouraging for patients to stay on track and to be part of that process. The other thing that's really fun about this is we've been able to say yes to a lot of patients that either travel for the majority of the year or that have moved out of the country in some cases, or out of the state. So I've been able to start some remote treatment in patients that lived in Canada, patients I used to have up there that had come back and forth, and other patients that have moved to Africa even. And I would never have been able to do that if it wasn't for Grin. Or if I did, I would have just handed them aligners and say, maybe good luck. But we actually have patients in braces that are living in these locations, where I'm very proud to say we've been able to manage all of their needs remotely through Grin. So that's been a really cool thing about our practice. And this is kind of some of our most excited patients are the patients that love Grin, because they're seeing the progress. So this is a Damon Ultima case that I started back in May. And this was the first scan that she took at the bonding. And she actually lives in a different state. And this was her just in January. This was the scan that she took on the lower right. And this is after 3 office visits. We had several care calls with her, through Grin that we just talk to her and just check in. But we were waiting to make space for lower right 3. And we didn't really want to see her back until that space was there. So our first was even, I think, like 3.5 months. And normally I would never put a patient out that far. But after seeing, how good we can look at these pictures, we were able to do on-demand appointments for her. So just from May to January, now we've had, huge success in just treating her malocclusion, but we haven't had to see her back in the office, which again costs her a plane ticket to come in. So that's been a huge, just a huge eye opener, I guess, to some of the possibilities. So we use a team approach in using Grin. It's not just a clinical thing. It's not just something the TC talks about. It's not just something that I talk about. Everybody is doing it. So it starts from the new patient exam. We have brochures that Grin has provided us, and now it's actually part of our new patient kind of take home folder, where they can actually download the app. And we invite them generally in the TC. If it's the same day start, the TC is responsible for inviting them to the app. And that's a very quick process for them to sign up. They get a text, they get 2 text messages, one with a link to download the app if they haven't already. And then the second has a temporary password, and immediately they can set up an account on their phone. Under 5 minutes, they're ready to do their first scan. We give them the scope at their bonding appointment, and we take the first scan in the office. And that's a really critical key to what I think has made us so successful with this. And then during active treatment, we're using the scans to monitor them. We're handling emergencies. We're going over hygiene, and we're also doing rescheduling appointments or extra reminders for certain things if it comes up. We have had patients now in retention, and the best part about Grin is that it doesn't take up one of your active spots to do retention scans. So when the patient's in retention, they get a certain allotted number of scans that they can use, and that you can program. So this is happening automatically, and that your team is already tuned into what needs to happen. So that's one thing I really like, is that now our retainer checks are fully on Grin, and we have, again, those amazing scans. By then, the patient's been really, really good at scanning, and they're very consistent. And so our team is all cued into this so that they know what to look for on those scans. So that's a little bit of the team approach that we use. And one other thing I mentioned that was really important to us is that the first scan is taken in the office. This gets them out of the clinic chair, and we book 60 minutes for bondings. I believe most offices typically book, 60 to 90 minutes. We really want that patient to get out of the chair and do the scan over in the brushing station or in front of a mirror. So we have a mirror set up in our clinic, and they specifically take the scans there, and we go over hygiene at that point. Our hygiene instructions are now automated, and I'm going to show you how the templates within Grin make that super easy for us to send the OHI. But now we can even just review the scan with them right there after they've taken it. And this is my son here getting his first scan. That was his first time. And now we don't have to spend this like 15 minutes having them watch a video that they probably fell asleep through, and then have them ask us all the same questions. Now we've set them up with this lifeline, right? And so they can ask us on the app if they had a follow-up question, or if they're not sure how to floss, just say, you know what, give it a shot. And then at the next scan, we'll see how it's going. So these are the kinds of things that we can now outsource to Grin to free up a clinical chair. And that encouragement for them, they all do really, really well. And we have probably a 95% scan rate on the first day of scan. So the question is, who's going to do this, right, in the office? And I told you we have a team approach to Grin. So our office is really decided that the front desk is the best person to actively manage these scans and to follow up with the patient. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. We have the clinical staff, like I mentioned, do the first scan and review the conversations before seating a patient. So we have a preparation time before our morning patients and before our afternoon patients. And so in those, if there's a Grin message, the front desk will write that into our practice management software and just say check Grin. And then we'll go in there and actually review what it is that we were doing, whether it's a repo that was planned. If it's an emergency, a certain bracket fell off, we're ready with that bracket before they even come in. We've been able to get patients with, a broken lower right 6 in and out of the chair in about 3 minutes, using some of our planning with Grin and just some, fast turnaround time. So where normally that would take a lot longer because you have to investigate what's broken and decide if you're going to, are you going to do an adjustment today, or are you going to push them out? And all that can be done before they even come in the door, which is awesome. We got to that point though, by first myself getting really comfortable with the platform and seeing what the sticking points were. So I managed the first 50 patients, and I would recommend every doctor that's interested in trying this, that you get, your own Scanvicate, in your office, and decide, okay, who's going to be the kind of core team that's going to at least get this going. And a good place to start is just your new patients, because they're the easiest ones to introduce something new to. But that first 50 patients really gave me an eye opener to how great this product was. So we have, like I mentioned, all our team members look at Grin. And there, I think there's a big reason for that. Now, and I totally respect how other people use Grin. It's not that my way is the best or that there's only one way to do this. I think it's such a versatile tool that you're going to see a lot of different offices employ this differently. Because all our front and our back office both look at Grin, the scripting becomes really easy. And for people that you're training, I think scripting is one of the most powerful tools to get everyone on the same page. And because you have this durable chat room, that's the HIPAA compliant chat room that's with the patient, you can see exactly what was said to this patient before, maybe the last time they didn't have good brushing, or the last time they had a broken bracket. Because now at this point, no one's sitting there saying, "Oh, do better on your hygiene," and maybe maybe there was a conversation before that wasn't as nice, and so you can kind of make sure that you're following up without having to have this perfect knowledge of everything that's gone on with the patient. So any staff member can come in to this conversation at any point and have that presence of mind, or have that really good follow up with them. And that's really because everyone has the same information. I really love too that Grin is a big part of our office culture, and because we have these great documented every intervaled photos and videos, so we can show patients before and after the whole time during treatment. And I love taking photos, but I do realize that for my staff, they're often not as excited to take photos every visit, and so we try to schedule when we do take photos so that we can plan on it. I would love to have photos of DSLR photos at every single visit. Now I get that with Grin, and I have the patient do it. So this is the best part. It frees up my staff, and they don't have to take those. And the videos that I'm showing you today are excellent quality with all kinds of phones. And so I've been able to do this. This seems like a clinical thing. And I want to talk about this because over the last year, we've had a real understanding of how this works. One of the best things is that it's super easy to reschedule appointments when the front desk is checking this, because as patients and parents use Grin, they're going to be asking about their appointment. They're going to be asking about follow-ups. And with the front desk taking the primary role of checking this on a regular basis, every 5 to 10 minutes, they're the ones that can initiate that rescheduling. The asynchronous nature of Grin is super powerful for someone who's basically at a front desk, who's in front of a computer, but maybe has some patient interaction. So when they do have time, they can go back. And I find that because Grin is its own dedicated app, patients or parents are not checking it unless there is communication and notifications. So what that means is they're not necessarily getting impatient about maybe not hearing back within 30 seconds. Now we try to respond as fast as humanly possible, right? But the patient in front of us is always the number one priority in the office. So we want to prioritize the face-to-face contact. So if someone says, "Hey, can I reschedule my appointment?" or "I have a pokey wire," we can get back to them in a timely manner. And they're not like frantically checking their text messages every 5 minutes or doing something else on their phone and noticing, hey, that they didn't respond. So that kind of asynchronous nature of Grin really helps the front desk to get to it when they do have time. One thing that a lot of people say, well, how does your front desk know, what to do for a pokey wire or what to do for, a liner not fitting? With the library of patients that we have now, all these scans that we've had over the last year, we have a few names that we all know, that we've looked at their scans and seen some of the issues. And so we talk about this in our huddles. And with success, or we maybe a sticky situation with the patient, we pull up Grin and say, hey, here's what was said, or here's the scan image. Or, for example, maybe it's not appropriate to tell a patient to trim a wire when it's a finish wire. We could ask them to trim clean toenail clippers, right, on a 14 nightie, but we couldn't do that with, a 1925 steel, right? Things like that, where maybe some are learning. And all of our patients are aware that we take a team approach, that there's contact directly with me, but also the team will jump in as well. And so we mentioned that in the TC room, that we're all part of the communication tool. And the big reason why I like the front desk checking it is because it really frees up our clinical staff for the person in front of them. And we always prioritize patient care. It's a patient care day. And there's lots that can be done, again, in between patients. So I feel like a clinical staff member needs to be primarily focused on turning over chairs, having those high impact touch points with the parents. And so we really want them to be free to do that. So, and when we do that, we get reduced wait times. And so our office, we have a policy, no one ever waits for an appointment. We can see them across the hallway coming in. We have a long hallway in our office. So we're grabbing them basically the second they come in. And our goal for all of our assistants is to hear the words, that was fast. That's what we want our patients to say every day they come in is, oh, that was fast, or I was expecting this would, take longer. And so when we hear that, that's like music to my ears, and we should have like a gong that we ring every time someone says that in the office. It happens about once a day at least, and Grin has really been a huge part of that. Okay. So because some of the lessons that we've learned 1 year into this, and what we've seen is that now we're super in tune. So when we see an ER visit on our practice management software, my staff immediately want to know what was on Grin, because they love being prepared. And we just have a game to see how fast we can fix a broken 7. And I kind of have the assistants race me as I'm getting the tooth prepared and they're getting the bracket ready. And so we have a great time with it. Again, it goes back to our culture that we're trying to be quick and be effective in our communication. So that's been something where I thought I would have to babysit that. And over time, the staff just kind of latched on to that. Oh, this is so much better. Like, I love that we can get an ER patient in and out, because ultimately the clinical staff want a break, right? They want to have some time too. So they don't really love ER visits any more than I do. The other thing that's been a really interesting side effect is that our phone call doesn't ring, our phones don't ring as much. They still ring for new patients. So I'm not driving, patients down the street or something. But our patients are so conditioned to using Grin that they're preferring that over texting. And so we tell our patients, hey, text us. We have Weave as our phone system. So we're using text message reminders. And that's really how we communicate with patients for rescheduling anyways. But now they're using the Grin app primarily. And so our phone really doesn't ring unless it's a telemarketer or a new patient. So it actually makes us a little bit more attuned to when the phone does ring, because we're like, hey, that's probably a new patient, right? That's probably not an existing patient. And that's been actually really fun for the front desk, because now they're not getting distracted. And I really think a key cause of burnout for front desk staff is the phone. And when you have parents calling and they're driving and you can barely hear them and they're talking about something, a lot of times it's just easier to say, hey, just come in and we'll just figure it out. And you might have booked 20 minutes and it was just a power chain that broke, right? And you're like, oh, we didn't need a 20-minute, ER visit for a power chain. But that kind of touch with Grin and having the scans has eliminated those kind of needless appointments. And I want to talk about the new features that Grin that I was able to pilot, and how that's even saved us more time even within the app. So one of the things that it does now is Grin uses AI to extract the composite photos from the video scan, and it will place these in what's called a timeline, and you can review them a lot quicker. So if you're just looking for like retention scan or just a really quick review, this view is really powerful to give you just the information you need, because sometimes patients are a little slow moving from side to side, and this extracts that automatically, and it can sharpen it too if there's issues with the detail. So it's a great tool that we've been using more and more as we're looking at more scans in the day. So that's been part of the innovation within Grin, within the software, that's getting better and better. And I know there's a lot more things to come. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I keep talking about culture because this is a big part of what we tell our patients. This was actually a composite shot. So this is before the timeline view came out. And this patient had seen me twice, so the bonding and then one visit. And she was in self-ligating braces. She took this picture herself, and she said, I've been showing all my friends this. And I'm like, oh, what are you showing them? I'm like, okay, I'm kind of nervous now. And then she showed me this picture. And it's this, every month I had her scan every 28 days. And this is what she came up with. And I was like, that is so excited about this. And instead of me just kind of like looking over her shoulder, being like, oh no, that looks pretty good or whatever, we called like all the team over and said, hey, check this out, and everybody was super excited about the progress. Now there's still a lot more to do, and there's other exciting points, but this was like maybe 2 months into me using Grin, and a patient had created this collage on her phone and shared it with me. And that's when I really knew I had something special. This is something that never happened before, right? The best that patients usually do is show you like a picture of a smile before from like, homecoming 20 years ago, right? And they'll show you how their smile looks now. But this was really cool. And I didn't take these pictures, right? The patient did. So, we just have a lot of fun in the office, and Grin has made it easy for all different types of our patients, young and old, to get involved, and also different types of appliances. So I'm going to talk about what types of protocols we use for different appliances, so you guys can kind of see and maybe think of ideas how this would work for you. So we do use it for all of our patients. For our observation patients, it's optional. Generally, we have siblings in observation, right? Younger siblings, and so they're using the scope on their older siblings' account, and sometimes we'll coordinate that. But for clear aligners, for braces, like you saw earlier, and then expanders or appliances, we're using that. And we can select a unique scan interval for these people. I would love to see scans for clear aligners every week or every 2 weeks, but that would be too fast for braces, right? So these are some of the protocols that we use in our office. So for braces, we scan every 28 days. And our in-person visits initially, while we're in light wires, are usually every 2 to 3 months. For expanders, generally, I'm just doing 1 turn a day for 28 days. So we will have them take that scan in 28 days, and then I'll either advise to do additional turns or just to hold and stop scanning. And then we'll see them back in about 3 months to either place braces or do some other activation. For aligners, now we do scans every 14 days. Now I still do aligner changes either 5, 6, or 7 days. But for some of our patients, we just have them come back for IPR. So I always stage IPR in the middle of however many aligners they get. Usually that's 32. So I'll see them back usually at 14 to 15 weeks and do the IPR at that point. I find that scanning every 14 days is good for a lot of people. I don't see training issues develop over 1 tray. Usually it's over like 3 or 4 where you start to see those issues. But I do recommend, if you are seeing some of those issues, or at the beginning, scanning every week is a really easy way to kind of get them on a habit. So every time they change the tray, they take a scan. I just found, for us, in many ways, we started using sparkle liners and found the fit was really, really good, and the tracking was really, really good. So scanning every tray just kind of became a little redundant for us. But we toggle back and forth between the two depending on the patient. And then other appliances, we just have them on the same kind of schedule as braces, about every 28 days, and then we plan activation accordingly. And retention, you can do scans every 2 weeks. You can do it every month or every 3 months. So we might start them on a 14-day cycle and then switch to 3 months after we've kind of given the clear to go to nighttime. So everyone's kind of aligner, Essex retainer retention period is different. We typically go 2 weeks full time and then nighttime, definitely. And so we like that first scan being at 14 days, and we're looking at a scan with the aligner in or the retainer in and the retainer out, so we can see the fits. And we just ask them, hey, how's everything feeling? Do you have any questions? And we ask them, hey, have you tried going to nighttime? And then we have that conversation with them on Grin. So another thing that we use for Grin for is team training. Because we have these photos, we can say, hey, let's look at the bracket position, or after the bonding, we can sit down with the assistant and say, hey, what went on here? And this was a patient where, the mom had thought that she needed to come back in because they're missing a color, and we were able to explain, hey, for a reason we weren't able to get a color tie over the Kobayashi hook that we had placed, and so, hey, it's totally fine that she's missing a color. And then I went back and talked to the assistant. I said, hey, everything went great here. You did a good job. Next time let's try to get the Kobayashi hook under the wire so we can get the color on and pop off in the parking lot. And just we can have that conversation and see what was going on. I think sometimes assistants just don't know what they can improve on, or they're getting feedback in a timely manner. And frankly, we don't have time. If we went to every chair twice, if you were seeing 70 patients a day, you'd be seeing 140 a day, right? So there's no way for us to go back and look at everything that assistants do once they pass kind of that grace period where they're learning. but there is still learning that needs to occur after that. So these pictures and videos really help, especially as we triage our emergencies at the end, right? And we look and say, okay, what needs to be seen? We can see clearly what's going on. And hopefully there's not any, finger pointing, but we're a close team. So we all get it. We're all learning. And I also too, I mentioned here on the slide, sometimes you have these problems and it might take 8 weeks to figure out that problem's there. So if a wire wasn't tied in correctly, or a tooth wasn't engaged properly into the new wire, if you're using twin brackets, or maybe a door wasn't closed and self-ligating brackets, you guys all know that. I mean, you get to the end and you're detailing, and then you realize something wasn't tied in just right, and now you're set back at least a couple months, and that happens all the time. And even the best practices, that's not something just for offices that are overwhelmed. It's everybody. So I love that we can check into those things faster and catch them. The other thing that's really changed with Grin is our hygiene protocol. And I know a lot of offices spend a ton of time on hygiene. I mean, I think it's probably one of the most critical things that we either spend a lot of time on or we need to spend more time on. So I'll show you how this has simplified our hygiene protocol. And if you're like me, when you see a debond and you see white spots around the braces, or even on aligners, we see white spots. And it's just, your heart sinks a little bit, right? You look at those before and after, and you're like, oh man, like, what could I have done? And I know it's, it's on them, right? I don't take on, some of their issues, but I really feel like I did everything I could do. So we have this picture on the right. We have that saved on our desktop. So anytime my front desk team sees someone like this, right, for hygiene, they'll take either a still shot with a little arrow showing them where they need to brush, or they'll also send them this picture. And we do recommend an Oral-B toothbrush, but this just shows them, I think, just the general movements, because we have a lot of kids that kind of go back and forth between manual and electric. And that little image on the right has really helped us to communicate how they're supposed to be brushing in all the different angles. So the idea would be that, the patient would submit the scan. We would notice the poor hygiene or the plaque around the gum line. In some cases, we're just telling them, hey, let's brush a little bit better, and then we'll scan you again in 2 weeks. For some patients, we're going every week on the scan until their hygiene gets better. So we tell them, hey, I want you to scan every 7 days until this gets better, and here's some help, right? So before, what we were doing, our old protocol was we would have clinical staff check and grade and record hygiene every visit, and we still do that. But if they had a C, so out of A, B, C, D, if they got a C, we would review OHI. We would still do the adjustment, or what we were going to do in the appointment, but we would spend an extra few minutes and go over OHI. Usually we're brushing the teeth and they're holding a mirror, something like that. If they had a second C, so a second poor, score, then we take a quick center photo. We don't do an adjustment. There's no adjustment done. And then we send a letter to the dentist and talk to the parent about, maybe an extra cleaning a year and things like that, and make recommendations on whatever they tell us. At the third C, we send a letter, and it's not like a strongly worded letter, but that's what we would send. Something like, hey, we've been working on hygiene. This has been the third time. We're really concerned that we can't get the ideal results. And that was mailed. And usually when you mail a letter, that's when you get attention, for better or for worse, right? Sometimes that attention gets changed. Other times it gets a nasty phone call that I have to answer on my lunch break, right? But I want that documented for my own, sanity. I want to know that we've had that discussion. And, sometimes I'll take a little bit of a difficult conversation with a mom where she's maybe offended or, doesn't like it, versus having to mention it in the clinic. So we try to keep those conversations fairly, private. And we have an open bay with dividers. We don't want people hearing about someone's bad brushing in a real serious conversation. So just kind of a general like coaching is fine. But we found the letters were very effective. And then if it happens again, we're switching gears, or we're moving into retention. So now with Grin, this is our new protocol. So, every scan is an opportunity to reinforce hygiene. So we're mentioning good and the bad, right? Every 28 days for braces, we're saying, hey, great job on your brushing and flossing, or your teeth look so great, or all these different things. And sometimes they have a life event that causes the hygiene to go south for a bit. And so you have someone that generally is really good, but they just need some encouragement. So that positive reinforcement from the scan is a huge tool for us. We do have the opportunity to do video reviews, and it's something that we have a really big monitor in my lab with a webcam. And so I'm able to do a quick video review of their scan, where my voice and an arrow is all highlighted in the areas where I need them to brush. And that seems to be a really effective way to get their attention, because now they're not just seeing text, they're seeing something that I spent some time on. And it takes maybe 30 seconds of my time. But it's really effective, and it's really changed our results, because now we're not getting to that second and third C. When we have had continued issues, we just ask them to scan more frequently. And then now we're checking up on their scans. We're not checking up on necessarily their hygiene when we call them or we write them a letter. So it's a much more focused approach. And I really appreciate, I think the parents really appreciate what this has done for them, but we're seeing also the patients take more ownership in what's going on, because they can't hide it, right? If they're taking that scan, it's out there for everyone to see. So the result of this is very, it's increased the simplicity, more communication and cooperation, and less surprises, which is one of our mottos in our office. We don't want any surprises. One of the great things that's happened to Grin in the last year is this partnership with P&G. So now you have the ability to recommend the IO toothbrushes of what I use personally, as well as the Oral-B water flosser and some other products, whitening, through the portal. So right where I highlighted, there's a little a sparkly tooth logo, and you can click on that and recommend whatever product that you want. And the patient's going to get a better price than Amazon, and you as the office also get a little incentive as well from P&G. So this is a great way that you don't have to inventory anything now. And this is one of the things that's really changed for us, is that we used to stock all these toothbrushes and water flossers, and now we push it right through the app. The patient can buy it right there, and they get that lowest price, which again is generally lower than Amazon. And so they're getting a super good deal. We're getting an incentive, and now I don't have to worry about anything. They're just giving away products. So this has been a huge game changer. The other thing that's really been helpful is right next to it is the templates. So you can now template replies. So for example, when we have a liner, we just push them the template. And it talks about, all the little instructions that we used to print out on a piece of paper. So now it's durable, it's in their chat box, they can refer back to it. And then I don't feel like, oh, well, mom threw that away on her way out the door. This gives us all a reason to look at Grin more and more. So you can customize these templates and put anything you want in there. If you do a lot of lingual braces and you have a special lingual instructions, you can put that on there. If it's for hygiene, that's our main go-to is those saved replies. Or if you're maybe there's like a message that you're closed for spring break, anything like that can be customized and put in there to patients. So the net result with this, it saves paper. We have really clear instructions. There's no, it's not going to get thrown away, and it's really fast for us. So we love being able to recommend that. I wanted to share with you some of the results of our surveys. I finish up the webinar here. We're going to have the Q&A here shortly. I mentioned earlier that we had done a customer satisfaction survey. So we had 42 patients participate in that, which was great. We asked them a few questions about Grin, and they were able to give us some short answers and vote. So from the patient's perspective, they really feel like their experience and overall satisfaction has increased. So we had 4.5 out of 5 had a significantly improved experience in the whole orthodontic process. For their journey, they've also felt like, in the things that we give in Grin, or the way that we utilize Grin, has helped it convenient for them. 85% said easier to communicate, and 60% said it saved them time. And whether that was rescheduling appointments or visits, that was a huge part in how they felt like their whole journey was better because of Grin. Another question, which again, I really like this one because I was like, hey, do you want to write a 5-star review? But they really felt, everybody said, this is great. Like no one said, I don't want to download another app. And that was my fear at the beginning. I thought, well, no, parents aren't going to want another app. But it's not this like app that like annoys you, right? It's stuff that they need, and it gives them a lifeline to our practice. So in the busy world and running around, people don't want to have to pick up the phone and call. They would rather text. And now we have this clinical and administrative text, kind of unison. So everybody loves it. And I'm not under exaggerating that point. And 4.8 out of 5 was the score for easiness to use. And we've done, again, because we do that first scan in the office, they know how to do it, what to expect. We coach them. And that's really what we spend our time on in that last 5 minutes or so of a bonding appointment, versus having them watch a video on hygiene, which they kind of slept through, right? So we're actually giving them something really useful for all of us and telling them the benefits. So we also asked them just to do kind of like a open-ended question or open-ended comments about what they like. And one person really liked that they could just do it at home, that it was so easy. They didn't have to like come into the office for all these appointments. Another one, I think we're seeing more and more that for aligners, this is really, really important. And for some of our patients that live far away, some of our live in even an hour away or in a different country, right? They're seeing that this is a huge, huge benefit to them. And this is my favorite one. The parent said it's great to see her teeth are changing her mouth without having to pry open her mouth. So it was really fun to see how the parents are using it and not feeling like they're just kind of going with the flow. They can actually be an active participant in this whole process. And I love that patients are getting involved in their results. They're actually seeing the results of what they're doing, and they can keep those. And that's a great benefit to them. So I just wanted to go over a couple best practices. So number one best practice is have the patient do the first scan in the office. So a new patient, have them do it at the end of their visit. Get them out of the clinical chair so you can free that up for other things. I would consider doing a shorter scan interval, especially for aligners at the beginning of treatment, and then you can always lighten up later. I love video reviews for reinforcing, good things and also addressing bad ones. I find that that's just a little bit more powerful. It's almost having that same effect of the mailed letter that our old hygiene protocol used to be. We do all of our care calls and everything like that through Grin. But if someone's not following up through Grin, or they're not using the platform, or they have a scan that's overdue, Grin will remind them to take a scan. And if an overdue patient is kind of chronically overdue, we usually just follow up with a phone call and say, hey, did you have any questions about the app? Did you lose your scope? Whatever it is. And then we have to tell them, and this is a huge thing that my TC does, and she loves Grin herself. She has 2 daughters in treatment, and they love seeing the progress photos. But we just tell them, hey, this is how we want you to communicate. And I usually tell the parents that too, that this is your lifeline to me and my team. And I want you to use this instead of just letting them call us or just however they want. So we tell them this is our preferred method, and that is helpful as well. Some common concerns, well, whose phone do you use? If you have a young kid, generally we're using the parent's phone. So whoever's there with them, but kids younger and younger having, full on, iPhones, which again, I'm not going to go there, but we have no problem setting that up. So we also tell the parents that they can download the app on their phone and use the same login credentials that they're using for their son or daughter's phone. And so they can both see the notifications and see what's going on. Some people are like, well, wait, if I do this and I kind of forget, again, because of the asynchronous nature and because it's not in their text message kind of hub on their phone, parents aren't super impatient, and they understand that there might be some time. They tend to respect the business hours, kind of rule. Sometimes people are like, well, wait, we don't have enough time to fit this in. Again, look at how much time you're spending on each aspect of bonding. If you're booking more than 60 minutes for bonding, I think that's totally fine. I love when doctors take a really active role in new patient bondings, and sometimes they book longer because they really want to make sure everything's there. I guarantee there's time there that you can allocate for the scan, as it's going to save you time later. And it's also going to get you better results with your hygiene. So if you were normally spending 15 minutes on OHI, spend 5 of those minutes just setting them up on Grin. And now they're going to have continued education and support throughout the whole treatment, not just at the beginning. And then some people are like, well, there's other systems that do monitoring, and they seem a little bit more scalable. Nothing is more scalable than something that you can have your team do. Right? That is the number one thing. You have to be able to free up your time. So after you get the hang of things and how they work, the protocols will evolve in your practice as you start to use this. And as you see how your patients interact with you and team interact, it will naturally fall into place. And I felt this more than ever recently, as I had a staff member literally tell me, hey, we took care of this emergency while you were gone. And they were able to set it up all through Grin. And I was like, this is fantastic. I had 100% confidence that they did the right thing. And I was able to see a scan right after the emergency visit, even though I wasn't there. So many things that, that you can do with Grin. I think all of you are so much more creative than I am and can think of a million different ways to use this in your practice. So I encourage you to reach out to me. I'm going to turn the time over right now to Zach. He's going to go over a great offer that we have for all of you for attending this webinar. And thank you so much for your time. We are going to allow Q&A after Zach's comments. And I'll post my email as well. You can reach out to me on Facebook with any questions, and we can get you in touch with some of our sales reps. So I'll turn it over to Zach.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dr. Gage. Really appreciate you taking the time to kind of run through the successes that you've had with Grin at your practice. We're really excited that everybody joined us on the call today. I hope that you gleaned some knowledge and some information on what Grin can do for your practice. And like Jillian said at the beginning, Dr. Gage is an early adapter of Grin. And it's just so exciting for me to be able to see kind of what he's done and where he's gone with this. And yeah, I hope it's kind of started the wheels turning in your heads of what Grin might be able to do for your practices and, with your staff and your patients. Again, kind of a token of our appreciation for, kind of hopping on this call and sitting with us for the last 45 minutes to an hour. We wanted to put together this promotion for you guys, something that is kind of exclusive for you for being on this webinar. And it's right there on the screen for you guys kind of to easily read, but we wanted to make sure that we put something together for not just people that are, new to Grin, but for the folks that are joining this call to kind of dive deeper into their practices. And again, learn from Dr. Gage and what he's been able to do in his. So right now, the promotion that we have for you guys is if you buy 50 scopes, we're going to include 5 free, up to 20 free. Most folks, when they get started with Grin, they're diving in head first because, again, that's really where the value is with Grin. So that's up to 20 free. So that's a $480 value. For any new subscribers, you're going to be locked in at that $199 price for the first year. I'm sure this is, it's a little vague, but there's obviously a couple different options, but we want to make sure that when you get started, you're, again, locked in at our lowest price point. And that's going to be for your first entire full year. Again, I'm sure you guys have a ton of questions. We're more than happy to, sit down, schedule some in-person demos. We would love to speak with you guys. There at the bottom, there's that QR code. Easily scan that. You're going to get the ability to directly choose time on our calendars with either myself or Dominic. Again, we'd love to speak with you, kind of give you an in-person demo, maybe hear a little bit more about, how your practice works and how you might see Grin fitting into your practice. And then hopefully in the coming years, you're going to be able to expand and kind of run the type of operation that Dr. Gage is. But again, if there's any questions, we'd love to chat with you guys and get them answered for you. Thank you so much for joining again. Thank you, Dr. Gage, for kind of running us through this. Really appreciate your time. So yeah, without further ado, I think we can kind of open this up to the Q&A.
Great. I think everybody feel free to come off mute, and I think I had to mute a couple of people when they joined just for some background noise, but feel free to turn your mute off, and we'll open up the Q&A for some open discussion. Everybody's a little quiet this evening. Come on, guys, it's Thursday night. No. Okay, well, if we don't have any questions, also feel free to utilize that chat feature too. We are recording this right now, so I will share a recording of this webinar next week. Check your email. We'll be sending this out early next week. So if you had some team members that couldn't join live, or if you want to watch us at a later time, you will absolutely have the ability to do that. And Zach, I don't know if you want to just type or share your, I know we had the QR code up on the screen, but if you and Dom want to share your emails in the chat so people know how to get a hold of you guys. We're going to be recapping with an email here shortly as well. It'll be coming from Grin directly to you to recap this offer and also direct you directly to Zach and Dom as well.
So I just threw my email in the chat. So yeah, feel free to shoot me an email. Or like I said, the QR code works. You could probably just reply back to the email address that this invite came from, or any emails that you've gotten from Grin in the past. So we'll make sure that you get directed to the right person.
I'll just say one thing. First of all, awesome job, Dr. Gage. I love seeing how different doctors utilize Grin differently, which is amazing. There's a common thread for sure throughout, but little tips and tricks and things like that I'm taking notes and I'm going to bring back to my practice. When it comes to the hygiene, what I've especially loved is the fact that it's not just about that we can send these scan reviews, these videos back to the patient, showing them precisely, but now at the end of treatment, when parents sometimes suddenly become engaged and say, nobody ever told me any of this, it's all there in video, right? In text, in video, it's all there. Sometimes it's living on mom's phones, as you said, not even the patient's phones. So that's been really, really cool, at least for some of my moms and dads up in northern New Jersey.
That's great.
I think we've also got a question in the chat.
I have a question.
There you go.
Can you hear me? It's Greg Greenberg.
Absolutely.
Okay, my question is around the observations. Utilizing it for an observation. We moved to the other room. My TV's on in the background. Many times, I might be doing an observation check, and I want to do a Panorex to see what's going on. What do you? I mean, how do you handle that if you are looking at them? I mean, because you may miss something. So, do you do it every other observation visit, or? And what I call my observations are people that aren't necessarily in treatment and getting ready to start treatment. Everybody has their own nomenclature, but I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, and that's great. So I use Jill Allen for my startup, so I use all her codes. So, an observation for us is someone that, hasn't had any treatment. Obs 1 would be someone who, had treatment before and they're getting ready to start. And then like an Obs 3 is someone who's ready to start that needs reference. Right? So,
I lost you.
So for us, we're doing those opposite. Like when we don't need an X-ray, we're telling them, hey, we can do the next observation on Grin. And then we're recording that into our practice management software in my TC's column. We have a special code that does not queue any email or text reminders to the patient. So we just call that a Grin obs. And then we put that in her column, and then that cues her to go in and go message that person in Grin. Sometimes it's under a sibling's account. So that's why we have a practice management link there. And then she'll just go and say, hey, it's time to do a scan for, Grayson for his 6-month observation. These are usually like 10-year-olds where we did a Panorex at 9.5 or 10, and then we're just seeing them back in 6 months. So that's how we're using our practice management software and keeping my TC's kind of tracking sheets, clean. So she's not missing anything. So we actually do put an appointment in there. It just doesn't trigger anything to the patient. And it's a special type of observation, if that makes sense. And that's super easy.
Yeah, it's kind of like a little appointment column.
Yeah, exactly. And so we just put that in her column anyways, because it's still like she'll put it in her lunch column, or sometimes she'll put a bunch of them on the first day of the month, because she knows she has to get those done in the month. So she'll just look at them and say, oh, I got 10 to do, whatever, on the first day of the month. And then she'll just reach out to them over the month. And if they want to come in for a regular appointment, that's fine too.
Okay, and then you also, just to be perfectly clear, these obs 1s is what you call them. Patient you've been seeing for a new patient exam, they weren't ready, they didn't need anything. You put in an obs 1, you're checking them every 6 months, or whatever your time frame is. But you haven't actually done any treatment on them, so you're essentially investing another. How much is a Grin?
Well, it depends on, there's some buy get ones, but it's around, Jillian, do you know that just approximate to this?
Well, let's go at $35.
So once you're, I'll just jump in here. So once you're paying for your monthly, it's $24 a scope. And
Okay.
To answer your question, Greg, yeah, what we have is we find that in our practice, for example, you're right. I like getting pans on those kids, not often, but what we use it for is that every now and again, you have a patient that you're spending time in obs, you're seeing them once, twice, 3 times with the pano, and then somehow they end up in another practice. With Grin, where actually, if I want a pan, let's say once a year, I'll actually still have them take a Grin scan at 6 months, because it keeps them tied to the practice. And this way they're communicating with the practice. So it's really more of a, hey, yes, it's $24 for that kid, but now there's, X more % chance that this kid is going to convert in our practice.
Yeah, well, I get that part of it. I'm just thinking out loud and saying that this is one more investment in amongst all the other things that us orthodontists invest in to get a case starting at age 6 until they're buying them a Lamborghini by the time they're 16 just to get the start. But you know what I'm saying?
Totally.
Everybody's felt
it. But that's exactly the point. Like up until now, we're between water picks and T-shirts, I've spent more on swag for a patient than the $24 for sure. And remember that if and when this patient converts, they're using that scope. So you're not paying again for this patient for a new scope. That's their scope that comes through treatment. So ultimately, if they convert, it costs you nothing.
Yeah, and I tell you, I've got to say, I really see huge value in your RPE or your herps. I use the herps checks with this, because those are like 2-minute checks in and out of the office, particularly when they're turning it. And now you just see a scan and you can tell them. I mean, that's chair time. That's somebody. I mean, that's big. That's huge.
Yeah. Yeah, and unlike a T-shirt, right? It actually converts ROI, because every chair, minute you save is already multiples on what you're investing in the first place.
Okay. Yeah. And somebody, I kind of followed you a little bit, but as long as I've got the floor and it doesn't look like anybody else is in queue, I'll ask you about this. So somebody's communicating with you. This is a huge communication tool. I get that. Somebody's communicating with the office. Who in the, I mean, it seems to me like now it's a job for one more person. I mean, we've got two-way texting, so we're already texting continually with our patients. And I think in today's day and age, probably everybody's doing that. But for this, whose job is it when you come back from lunch and there's 3 Grin scans with a question about, my liner's not fitting, or did my attachment come off, or is the RPE loose, or my bracket's poking me, or, who's those things for in your office, and even not in your office, what's the workflow look like for other people in your
Well, I can say in my office, we have the front desk do it. So, we had a chair side who had about eight years of experience, and she transitioned to the front. So she had done, all the different things, herps, expanders. She knew, how to coach people through problems. So that really made it super easy to train her. The other person at the front desk had no training whatsoever. She was, new to us, new to ortho. So we had the front desk respond to that. You mentioned that your staff currently are using two-way texting. This isn't adding additional thing. It's just giving them a different platform, but now it's unified front and back office. So it's the same workflow, except now you're not getting the myriad of phone calls with the text message sprinkled in, and emails. By the way, we would get emails occasionally for emergencies. So now you're moving all that to one unified platform. And so we do get text messages for like rescheduling stuff, because that's how our automated system is set up. And we're not getting phone calls for emergencies, which we used to get a lot of. So.
Okay. And I'll just add from other doctors, including myself. So, and I love the way Dr. Gage does it. I have my digital care coordinator that's really responding to Grin. And don't forget, in my practice anyway, I was running 5 clinical chairs. Now I'm running 3 clinical chairs because of all the time saving. So I kept my team on board, and essentially the 2 additional assistants that now are not running chairs, one of them is running a new consultation column for us, so we can actually see more new patients. And the other one has become my digital coordinator. And thus her time is completely freed up to, submit all of my aligner cases, my customized ortho cases, my ULab, and Grin as well.
All right.
Great. I think we had some questions in the chat as well.
Yes, we do. Dr. Mahalik asked, how do you answer Grin messages after hours? I'm using, but seems I'm spending a lot of time answering messages and reviewing scans.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's along with everything we've just been talking about, right?
Yeah. I will say one thing, another best practice is to be really direct with the messages. So not to give open-ended questions, especially after hours, right? I had one the other day where we have time. So we open at 8:30. So we know from 8:20 to 8:30, I can book like a Grin emergency kind of thing, where if I don't have time to log in virtually to my practice management system, that I might just throw someone in at that time. Grin will send you an email notification if you want, and you can toggle that on and off on the weekend, or even change the email that it goes to. So if you want to be to receive those emails, and that's what I'd be getting in those first 50 cases, I would see some of the questions, and 90% of the stuff, gets resolved with a simple, hey, just put some wax on it kind of thing. But the other times I can just say, hey, just come in at 8:20. I can totally see that bracket's broken. I got a spot just reserved for these types of patients. And they 100% of the time appreciate that. I'm not going back and forth with them. If they do give a little bit of trouble and you're messaging them, and you're just like, yeah, really get a good resolution here, and just say, hey, we'll call morning on Monday. And that's my, my front desk, first job is to check Grin when they get into the office. So yeah.
It's funny because one of the biggest comments I see, and so, in my office, somebody's running this, my digital coordinator. I obviously always am jumping in just to see how communication is going. One of the biggest comments I always see is, oh my goodness, I didn't realize you guys were going to check this after hours, right? So it's kind of like what Colby said, because it's a separate app, a lot of times they're not actually expecting you to get to it instantaneously. And they're actually pleasantly surprised when and if you do. Great. Any other questions? Beautiful. Well, Dr. Gage, thank you so much, really. I always appreciate how, you're kind of like the yin to my yang. You're just this chill, calm, hey, I'm going to tell it like it is. I love it. I love it. So I'm sure the doctor did as well. So just from my perspective, thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. No, it was great. And Jillian for hosting, and Zach for everything. The Grin team is amazing. You guys are great to work with. I love a team that's, so focused on helping orthodontists do what we do best. It feels good to back such a great company, but a company that's continually evolving. Giving the same lecture in a year, it'll be like a whole different thing, and say, hey, this is where we're at now, and I'm super excited for that too. So we'll be at the Invista Summit, talking with doctors there, and then at the AAO and Orthopreneurs and other events as well. So excited to meet some of you in person. I know many of you professionally as well. Again, reach out at any time, and I'll let Jillian kind of finish up.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Gage. And thank you all so much for joining. Expect an email from us here shortly, and have a wonderful rest of your evening and a great start to your weekend. Thank you all so much. Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dr. Gage. Take care.
Yeah.